Hello, and welcome to That Girl Magik, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of wellness, self improvement, and magic. I am your host, Karina Franco, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey of discovery with you.
Hello. Okay, so today I want to talk about nutrition, and I think this is the first time I'm bringing this topic up in a standalone type of thing. But basically, I want to talk about nutrition for a very simple thing. For those that know me and follow me, you would have known that I am currently studying nutrition. And one of the most interesting things about how nutrition works is that each college will have the main things and then some different things. And I'm very intrigued by the fact that I have one class that encompasses an area of focus that a lot of people would not expect. So I have what is called primary production, which encompasses okay, this is going to sound funny to anyone listening, but basically is how the food is produced. That's all there is. How your fruits are produced, how your veggies are produced, how the meat, the fish, all that is produced. And it's really interesting having that perspective when you're studying nutrition because it's like, oh, I know about the foods, but you might not know how they are produced. I wanted to bring out to this episode this topic because I feel like a lot of things on social media get twisted around by those that either don't know enough or they do know enough, but they want to sell you something. So I'm coming here right now mainly as an informational thing. I am not trying to sell anything. I will not sell you anything. I have nothing to sell. I wanted to bring out my perspective as a nutrition student that wishes to go into the field of nutrition and wishes to provide people not only with education, but also with tactics to help them along the way. And I feel like the more I spend having certain particular classes, the more I see things in a completely different perspective. I wish to bring out the reality that every single country is different. Every single food production is different. The way that countries deal with food production is different. And it's really intriguing to see that. For those that don't know, I live in Portugal, which is a country that belongs to the European Union. And there's very strict guidelines on how food is produced. We can't particularly use pesticides. It's straight up like a last resort type of situation, and they need to be justified. If people are caught using pesticides, there's legal action. The food cannot be sold. So farmers have to use all kinds of other methods, traps for insects, other insects to kill, like plague insects or even other types of plagues. There's fungus that can destroy crops. There's bugs that can destroy crops. There's plants that can destroy crops. Um, and seeing this happen in all kinds of fields. So we're talking about I've seen in fruit production, I've seen in seafood production. Today, like I've literally put a lettuce on the soil today. Seeing this process occur and then comparing it with other countries, it makes me realize how differently people as well can see nutrition and how food comes from. We all know the stories of the vegetarians and the vegans telling you how bad everything is and how awful. But it's like, if you were to choose to say that, for example, you don't want to eat anything that is living, well, define living. Because if we define living by having living organisms, then you're not consuming anything because water has organisms. Food has organisms. If we define it by things that can breathe, well, then you're only consuming water. Because the reason why plants and fruits go bad is because they keep breathing in their own plant way, but they keep breathing. If we're defined by having a brain, yeah, depends how you define brain as well. If we're talking about the typical brain, that would cut off pretty much every single animal. Yes. But that's different perspectives on different ethical ways of seeing the world, which is perfectly fair. And you do you. I'm not the person to tell you to not do it. But here's the thing, and this is where I do have a slight issue with. When we look at, for example, the USA versus Europe and other countries, they do have stricter guidelines. It upsets me to see how many things are allowed in the food of the US. And the reason why it's quite upsetting is because I think from the perspective of what if I lived there? I would be forced to buy everything organic. I would be forced to go to the more expensive side of the aisle just to make sure I wouldn't have pesticides, just to make sure that I wouldn't have ingredients that I don't wish, just to make sure that I wouldn't have added sugars that are hidden, just to make sure that I would feel like I would be buying an ingredient that felt farm to table. And I see how hard it is for anyone in countries like the US to feel like they're eating healthy. I see people escaping to my own country. I work as a store clerk and I've seen an uprise on people coming from all over the world to start living here for multiple reasons. But two that come up really often that aren't the ones at the top of everyone's head, like safety and beaches and whatever. The two top ones is life quality and food quality. Besides all the other major ones like gun safety, is a safer country, is a cheaper country, it's yada yada yada. The two main ones is like food and life. And life is, I would assume, an obvious one. Most people would not live their home, they would not get out of their home country if it wasn't to improve their life. But food? And then when you dig deeper, you're thinking, oh, it's probably because they like the dishes or whatever. No. Most of the time is because they came to visit, ate what they believe shittier or worse. They ate worse. And by worse, they mean like heavy on carbohydrates and all kinds of other stuff. And they actually lost weight. And it's because they might find themselves more active. They may find themselves eating better food, fresher food, as in they probably have grabbed it in the last 24 hours. Imagine going to places like you can in here where you can go directly to a farm sometimes and get your vegetables and your fruits freshly picked. That's not something that you see in the US unless you have your own farm. And you could argue, oh, but we have farmers markets. Do you know how often I've seen people scam on farmers markets where they buy cheap ingredients out of a supermarket, dirty it with dirt, and then proceed to sell it to you saying that they just got picked this morning? There has been people arrested because of that. In the meantime, I see how hard it is to grow food, how long it takes to grow food. The other day, I went into an oyster production. So people that they produce oysters for food, for human consumption. Do you know how long it takes for them to go from a baby oyster into a fully mature one that you can consume? 7 months. 7 months of you having to walk your butt to the middle of a lake, to the middle of a riverbank where the ocean meets the river because they only like water that is like half sweet, half salty. Imagine walking, having to flip them, having to divide them into metal bags, having to spend so much time doing that and then taking 7 months. And you want to know the funny thing? My country is one of the biggest producers. We only consume about 2%. 98% of what they produce goes outside of the country. We have the ability to eat the freshest oysters, and we don't because it didn't enter the Portuguese diet. We have the most wonderful fruit, the most wonderful vegetables. And most of the time, we are exporting them and importing from other places. And that's the reality anywhere you look. And in one part, yes, that's great because you're able to have foods that you wouldn't be able to experience it. But what happened to the freshness? What happened to the nutrition? What happened to eating well? What happened to not having all kinds of harmful chemicals? And I'm looking at you, US. I'm not looking at the people because you don't decide on this. And I'm so sorry that you're having a hard time when it comes to the people that are governing you. But the reality here is that the amount of chemicals that are being put in your foods, in your waters, even the way that the ingredient list is insane. If you compare a bottle of ketchup with one European bottle and one American bottle from the same brand, it is different. And from what I've heard, tastes the same. So you're telling me that it's not about taste? Then what is it? Shelf life? I've never complained about my ketchup lasting. It lasts relatively okay. It's those goddamned rules because you are afraid of bugs and parasites. But I don't think the issue is bugs and parasites because so far I haven't seen an epidemic of people having bugs and parasites in their stomachs in Europe. But we have seen a rise in obese people. We have seen a rise on cardiovascular health issues. We have seen a rise in type 2 diabetes. And we have seen a rise of ailments that all seem to be connected by one common denominator, which is lack of quality food. Not quantity, quality. And it's interesting because I will be a voice in this topic at some point. And I'm afraid in a way because right now I feel protected. Right now I am behind a screen talking to a mic to whoever wishes to hear me. But one day I will be in front of a crowd talking my 2 cents, and there will be people that will be angry at me. There will be people that will look at me and say, oh, but this is our lifestyle. This is our rules. Okay, fair. But are you doing it for the sake of the people? Or are you doing it to be quicker? Because, yes, you could go ahead and pick up some pesticides and that will kill every single little bug and little thing that you may have. But guess what? You will also kill the produce. You will also kill whatever thing you did so hard to grow. Because at the end of the day, who's going to eat it? Oh, but that also puts a question. Are you actually eating it? And what I mean is, we only eat what is pretty in the supermarket. How about the sweet potato that doesn't look particularly round? It almost looks like a radish. How about the pumpkin that is not round and came out oblong? How about the tomato that seems to have a second growth on it? You won't find those on your typical supermarket. But those grow because deformities happen. Nature isn't perfect. Nature just is. But somehow you prefer to go to the supermarket and go to that pretty little red apple that is so beautiful. And then you take a bite and it feels like you're eating water. But maybe a little bit further down, slightly hidden, we'll find some little apples. They're a little spotted, not pretty to look at, but those will be the juiciest, most wonderfully sweet apples that you'll ever eat in your life, but you didn't took a chance because they didn't look pretty on top of your table, because they didn't caught your eye, because it didn't trick you with the psychology of color, because all you've seen in movies and shows and everything is everything perfect. Social media, everything perfect. But food isn't perfect. Food is nutrition. Food is what fuels your body to keep going. The veggies, the fruits, the carbs, all the macros, everything is nutrition. Everything is beyond a number, beyond the pesticides, beyond all of that. At the end of the day, you are the one eating it and you make your choices. So if I am to advise you on anything, inform yourself before you conform yourself within the rules, because there might be stuff in there that you do not agree. And if you don't, then make your choice.
Don't forget to follow That Girl Magic to stay updated on new episodes. Let's unleash our inner magic and create the life of our dreams. I'll see you in the next episode.